Welcome to the Edgar Allan Poe podcast with your co-hosts Vicky Ray, Nez, and Keith Chow. Exploring book to screen and everything in between, delving into the dark despair and the sinister world of Edgar Allan Poe.
Hello, welcome to Literary Lessons Podcast, and today we're discussing Edgar Allan Poe, and our episode will be The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe, and Fall of the House of Usher, the 1960 film by Roger Corman and starring Vincent Price. And let's see who's with us. Well, today it's me and Lonesome Vicky. Hello, Vicky.
I'm lonesome. Hi, everybody. Rod's supposed to be here. He'll cut in at some point and remember us probably.
And if he doesn't, I'm sure he'll be here. Well, he probably won't be here next week because we're doing the Black Cat, and I believe Tom is joining us, so we might not see him next month. But that's a story for another time. So, as we get started, let's find out what our roses and thorns are. And because Vicky and I do this every single week, we have weekly thorns and roses because we do so many of these every week. So, Vicky, what's your rose and thorn of the week?
Well, I've got a shit ton of thorns, but it'll piss everybody off, so I'll just stick with, dare I say. I won't go into that one. I'm hoping you say it. Okay, I'm in the store yesterday, and this guy just keeps walking behind me. I doubt he was stalking me or doing anything, but don't walk behind me constantly down up in every aisle unless you're going to fucking rob me or something. It was just getting annoying. I mean, just back and forth, and he was talking to himself. He might have been some kind of derelict or some poor guy that whatever. But I mean, I just couldn't get rid of him. It seemed like, he was like in every section. He's like the guy in the Walmart, they got the people in there that are strategically placed to see if you're stealing. And you got the weird dude in there, the female underwear section, because that's where you are. That's just what he reminded me of. I just think he's just weird. And this other lady mentioned it too. It's like, God, man, is he going to rob us or what?
He wants you.
What about you?
Well, yeah, I'm giving us your rose. What's
My rose. Well-fitting, comfortable underwear by Duluth. Good stuff.
Well, let's see what my rose and thorn is this week. Well, I'm going to start with the thorn. My thorn of the week is Donald Trump's impeachment. I'm so fucking bored with it.
I know, I'm sick of it. I wasn't
just get on with it. Either do it or don't. Just get on with it.
We all know the outcome. Let it go.
And I'm so sick of everyone's with their little pieces of nuggets of information on both sides, and it's freaking boring.
Get her done.
And yeah, precisely. And I'm just sick of the whole cast of characters. It's like the world's worst soap opera put on TV. And you
can't even change the channel because it's on every affiliate. That's why I always said. That's why I said last week. Thank you for Netflix and Amazon Prime. There would be no relief.
It's just so boring now. It's just like, they're gonna do this, and it's just speculation. It's hours and hours of fucking speculation. So, so that's my thorn, and I'm bored with it. I mean, I don't live in the U.S. I live in the U.K., so it's even more boring for me now. It's just like. Just sort yourselves out, people, and stop doing that. And I always hate just tit for tat. I never was much of a winner for that.
Exactly.
And my rose has to be well, it's kind of bittersweet, but I finished Titans. I love season 2. I loved everything about it.
I still haven't started that. I'm still trying to get through American Gods.
Oh, yeah. American Gods, the first season's really good. The second season...
well, I have to keep turning it off because when I'm ready to watch it, Asher's in the house. And obviously, from the first 3 episodes, it is definitely not for young children.
Yeah, precisely. It's not probably good to have a child see a man being sucked up into a woman's vagina.
Or having male sex with some of the gods,
Yeah, actually, I think they handled that one I think they handled that very nicely, actually.
Well, Scott woke up and I was watching. It was just that scene. He goes, "What the fuck are you watching?"
Yeah.
I go, "It's American Gods." I go, "Keith said it was really good."
Yeah, the first season's brilliant. The second season kind of loses its way, and I have to sit there and say I haven't finished the second season.
That's depressing because the first season seems to be going so well.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great people in it as well.
Yeah.
I guess my other rose is Sabrina, the Teenage Witch, is back, and I'm quite enjoying it. I'm only 3 episodes in, but I'm really enjoying what I'm seeing at the moment. I really like her. I just wonder what
the Christian church thinks of this show. It's gotta seriously, it's the total opposite of Catholicism when you think about it. Everything is like a reverse mirror. I think it's excellent.
Yeah, and it's perfectly cast as well. Yeah, I know that before it came out, because we're in part 3 now. I remember before part 1 came out, people were like, "Oh, the way it's being cast and stuff like this," but it really works. So
it's fabulous. I can't sing its praises enough either. Definitely a rose.
Yeah, and since I'm home alone for the next 5 days,
where'd Isaac take off to?
Isaac's off to a yoga retreat. I don't want to say that word because it makes it sound like I'm saying something very vulgar. Kundalini. And I think Kundalini. Kundalini. And I always call it Congalingus yoga.
Well, that's the immature reaction and response.
Yeah, I'm fortunate I have the immature reaction to it. But he's there for a 7-day retreat in Lisbon.
That sounds fantastic.
So yeah, he went there today. So yeah, I got the place to myself. So I'm going to be slobbing out more than normal. So yeah.
More than normal.
So I'm going to catch up and hopefully finish off Sabrina. And there's a couple of things I need to finish off. So it'll be good for me.
Yeah.
And speaking of finish things off, I guess that brings us to The Fall of the House of Usher, which is a narrative short story by an American writer, Edgar Allan Poe, which was first published in 1839 in Burton's Gentleman's Magazine, before being included in a collection of tales of the grotesque and arabesque in 1840. The short story is a work of Gothic fiction and includes themes of madness, family isolation, and metaphysical identities. So, Vicky, what are your thoughts of The Fall of the House of Usher?
Well, it's one of my favorite Poe stories, but one of the things that I started researching actually, because it's really, I guess it's an analogy of I don't know, kind of aging process and deterioration of the body, maybe, because that's all this is about is deterioration. And Go ahead.
I think as I look at the story, Usher, the twins, Roderick and Madeleine
Doppelganger.
Usher,
well, they're going to explain that to me because I didn't get that doppelganger part.
Well, they're doppelgangers. So the simple fact they're doppelgangers with the house. They're one and the same.
Okay. So everything is connected. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, as they're deteriorating, the house is deteriorating. So basically, but I guess it's a bit like your family is your house.
Yeah.
And so if your family's broken, your house is broken. So I think that's the analogy that the House of Usher comes. Though I did find this quite a hard read. I enjoyed it, but I found it a hard read.
I had to read it in college, but I reread it again, and I still had to go back and reread it, and then I even had to go look up, like whatever cheat sheets you could find on the internet that were sort of like Cliff Notes back in the day. And a lot of it was tying into they were talking about was Poe apparently before he was, I don't know, he became this, I don't know, not a sadist, but he's just a depressed person obsessed with death. But they said in the beginning he was a mischievous child. He played jokes with his classmates. He was a regular dude. He had an excitable temperament with a great deal of self-esteem. And he had this grandiose view of the world, and it remained consistent until, he started getting all this negativity coming into his life. And then he got a consistent narcissistic self-view rather than with a healthy self-esteem. So he started generating these really fucked up stories. It was all surrounding death, decay, and he writes oppressive stories, and I love him. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's one of my favorite authors. He's so hard to follow, though. But you actually have to go into sometimes wondering what's wrong with him to understand why he's writing this stuff.
Well, when you go into Poe's life, he was surrounded by disease and death. His mom, his wife, his friends.
Mom died of tuberculosis.
And his dad died as well. And then he was, when they both died, then he was adopted by an uncle and aunt that he didn't really get on with. And then
he was a heavy drinker.
Died. Then he married his first cousin, didn't he? And then she didn't do very well. So,
well, they did say he died after collapsing drunk and delirious in 1849. So just what a sad ending. I mean, I don't know. It just reflects in his work. That's why I think I find him so fascinating.
Yeah, no, I have to agree with that. And before we go any further, hello, Rod. Welcome to the Literary Lessons Podcast.
Hello.
Hey, Rod, better late than never.
I know. I checked it out this morning. I said, I must do this at 1:00. And then I started getting busy. Part of it is because my sister's estate is closing. And today I got a notice from the lawyer asking me if I had paid off any of her creditors. And I haven't paid off any of her creditors. So I've been scurrying around, calling them, trying to make, deals with them. Because I don't know what this money is that they're charging her. So anyway, that's what I'm doing now. And then I checked my email to see if there was something from him. And I saw your message on Facebook. So here I am already.
Well, we started without you.
We started without you. We're in the middle of talking about The Fall of the House of Usher. It's a short story by Edgar Allan Poe.
Sure.
And what we were talking about is the brother and sister, Roderick and Madeleine, being doppelgangers, and how their life is a doppelganger to the house. And as the family unit dissolves, so does the house. So they're one and the same. That's what we were discussing. And then we were talking about the wonderful, fantastic comedy life of Edgar Allan Poe and how cheery and happy he was. Sarcastically, that's said.
Sarcastically, definitely speaking.
And how his life seemed to reflect in his writing about the death and the disease and everything that was going on in his life. So that's what you walk into.
And I did notice he always puts a poem within his stories all the time. The last one, I think this one was The Mad Tryst, about the knight Ethelred. He breaks into the hermit's dwelling, tries to escape an approaching storm, and how that all goes with the freaky, scary stuff that's going on with Roderick and his unnamed narrator again.
Well, I also found quite weird with The Fall of House of Usher is also we're dealing with another obsessed female object. But this is kind of weird because this is almost like an incestuous relationship that we had though it's not really incestuous.
Well, it could be telepathic, it could be incestuous, it's kind of, it goes normal. It could be anything though.
Well, Madeleine reminds me of Rebecca when we read Rebecca. And we dealt with Rebecca, how Rebecca's not really in the story. There's just the essence of Madeleine, because the only thing that we get of Madeleine is that she doesn't say anything, but she floats in and out of the room like a ghost. And you're thinking, And then until her death, and then the only time that she does make herself really known is at her death, is when she's trying to claw herself out from being buried alive.
Right.
And then of course she ends up being the death of Roderick for however. I know she must have been a heavy girl because she falls on Roderick and it kills him. But
I mean, I don't understand how they just died like that. They just died like that, I mean, it was a real quick death.
Or Madeleine was an extra on My So Fat Life. I don't know. Because they never really talk about her size. She just kind of floats in and out. So you just picture.
Well, you kind of assume, that all of his characters are kind of oddly beautiful. I mean, that's just the impression. Either that, it's just the way Corman represents them in his film. So that kind of sticks in your head if you watch it before you read the story, maybe.
Yeah. Well, but I think what's quite interesting about the story itself, I think it deals with a lot of interesting themes, though. And I love the way that Poe adds to the theme. So, like, when they're reading this when he's reading the short story, and as he's getting to the exciting part of the short stories, and there's a scare, and I don't know why the narrator would pick a scary story to read to Roderick to cheer him up, but he does.
The man has issues. It's like, come on now. I know he's reading him a scary story.
And the thing is like, as he's hitting like the most graphic scenes in the story that he's reading, is like, and then Madeleine's making the most graphic sounds trying to get out of her coffin at the same time. This is like, and I thought that was quite an interesting way to counterbalance what's going on here, and then making sure that we're actually getting another story that's kind of revolving behind this one that we're being told.
Well, what does she suffer for? Catalepsy?
Yeah, catalepsy. It's like
it's where you're
necrolepsy.
numb, or you can't move, or
it's like necrolepsy, where basically what you do is, but your breath goes very, very shallow.
Well, don't you think you'd make sure that it wasn't a cataleptic seizure before you'd inter your sister? I think he did it on purpose because he knew that's what's going to happen. He knew he had to
I think what you have to
alive.
look at is the medical science at the time as well, because at this time in Victorian times, this disease, this catalepsy, seems to be what a lot of people during this time period were dying from, and that's the reason why they started putting bells and stuff in graveyards, because a lot of people weren't dead when they were burying them. But then I guess catalepsy could be considered like people in comas. It's like being in a coma, sort of thing. And if you look at the medicine that was portrayed in like the 1840s, 50s, and 60s, there wasn't really a grand understanding of things. I mean, they were still doing leeches at this point.
And laudanum, lots of laudanum. Talk about a catatonic state.
Were they bleeding people?
Yeah, they would bleed people for different things and that sort of stuff. So this stuff was, that nothing really changed in medicine until around the 1890s, 1900s. And then modern medicine started taking hold.
He does have that, Sue. He does have that. He always does talk about some form of being buried alive. He was really fascinated with it, oddly, grossly.
Well, it's very horrible. I mean, I would think that would be a horrible thing to. But I noticed that one of the ways that they always tested to see if somebody was living was to hold a mirror up to their mouth. Yeah. If it didn't fog the mirror, whoops, he's dead. She's dead. Okay, get away with the body. Let's bury them in our handy-dandy tomb in our own house.
Well, they would have the flush of death, like she had the flush. They thought, she still had some pink to her face, and they did it anyway.
Well, it's like the Ligeia. Ligeia was, not Ligeia, but the other, what was his wife's name? I can't even remember, the second wife.
Oh, crap.
When she died, she slowly transformed into Ligeia, and so then again is the idea of dead but not dead.
Right.
Dead but not dead, coming back to life. I think it's so obvious to say that the House of Usher, the actual structure of the house, represents the Usher clan, and that has a big crack right down the middle of it that is cracked. And Corman really played up on that stuff. And he played up on the whole reason for the narrator to be in the house. I mean, the narrator in the story is coming to visit Roderick.
Well, they're childhood friends, were they not?
Yeah, childhood friends who haven't been close for years, which is kind of from my understanding. I mean, I found this text. I had to read it twice in order to most of it's like essence. Let's feel the essence of the story, sort of thing.
Right.
But from my understanding, it says in the beginning that they're childhood friends, but he hasn't kept in great contact with him. So it's almost like someone that you played with, though you haven't seen him for 20 years, and all of a sudden you're going back to visit them. So it's not like someone that they kept, really close relationship with. And
was he invited to go, or did he just show up?
Well, it seemed like he just showed up. He received a letter saying that Roderick was feeling a bit down, so he decided to go and cheer him up for whatever reason.
Yeah, who wrote the letter?
Stories.
Who wrote what about the Haunted Palace? I mean, that whole poem in there.
Yeah, because that's what we were talking about. He always seems to sneak in.
All that is about somebody, at one point somebody was mentally stable, and then somebody assailed the castle or the palace, which would be your mind, and you became insane, and everything that came out of you was gibberish and all that stuff. It was obvious to me that Poe was he was presenting, but you got to ask yourself why. I mean, was this entertainment? To read it.
Yeah, I mean, that makes you kind of wonder also is because this narrator is apparently going to see Roderick to give him a good, to help cheer him up. And the stories that he reads, Roderick, you're like, Christ almighty, you might as well just hand him a switchblade so he can do like the upside down cross on his wrist.
Yeah.
Now, Roderick, after I read you this story, I'm going to run you a nice hot bath.
Yeah.
And it's like, but I'm just, and I guess jokingly about Poe, if you're ever depressed, and Poe's the last person you would invite over.
But pull out of your library.
But then again, we do have a narrator that's untrustworthy. We're seeing things through his eyes, but he's very flippy floppy all the way through the story. So he's an untrustworthy narrator at the same time. So you kind of sometimes wonder, because like even the house has a great big split down the side, right down the middle of it, and then apparently you can almost see through it. But when he's in the rooms, when he's going through the rooms of the houses, he's not stepping over any. He doesn't say anything about stepping over any great big cracks or anything, and that which is kind of an odd thing to do, to sit there and state that you are going to his house. All the grounds around it are dead. There's a great big crack in the house. You kind of almost can see the other side. But when he enters the house, he never mentions this crack ever again until he leaves the house with the demise of the building. And which is you're kind of thinking to yourself like, and maybe this has to do with reading a lot. I read a lot of modern fiction, and modern fiction probably would address that, where Poe doesn't really address that in his story. So that's why I kind of think that he's kind of an unlikely narrator. And the simple fact that when he does see Madeleine, Madeleine like kind of swoops by, doesn't acknowledge him, and he seems more bothered that she didn't say hello to him than the simple fact that she just catatonally walked past him. Doesn't seem that concerned.
The story always makes the narrator an outsider, though. Is the outsider and Roderick's companion, who he asked over or whatever to be, help him through a dark time, are they one and the same?
Well, that's what I kind of wondering, because we do have a narrator that kind of stepped into the middle of a situation, which is classic Poe. What we do get with Poe is we get middle and end, but we never get a beginning sort of thing. Like we're kind of thrown in. We're kind of thrown in for whatever reason. And I think that we have to connect the dots. But with the narrator saying that he's there, basically, because Roderick's feeling a bit depressed. He's going to go there, see what's going on with his old chap and boy, sort of thing. And there's almost like, and this is what I found quite weird, but there's almost like a homosexual relationship undertone between Roderick and the narrator. Because the simple fact that there's Madeleine, and apparently she is very, pretty, sickly but pretty, she's
sickly and pretty.
but she kind of she flows across the room. It's mentioned that she's quite willowy and et cetera, but he doesn't acknowledge her. Always focuses on Roderick.
He does give him quite he describes him completely, from his hair to his lips being, whatever. I mean, he does focus on his countenance quite a bit. So, and
he doesn't really say any. So even when, Madeleine's scraping, he doesn't know it's her scraping and crying and trying to get out of her casket. He's more afraid because he thinks it's the house. He hasn't put two and two together. Then Madeleine shows up at the door covered in blood, falls on Roderick dies, but he doesn't seem that horrified with Madeleine. He seems more horrified that Roderick's dead. That's why I think it's kind of an odd thing to have, because you think that, okay, if your boyhood friends, and this is the twin sister, so obviously if you're playing with your friend, the twin sister's always there,
right?
And you think that they would have had some kind of relationship, a bit like, it's a bit like if your brother has a friend come over and that friend doesn't acknowledge you, even though you grew up together, even though there's not your friend, but they still grew up in your house.
I used to torture my brother's friends. They always knew when I was about the house.
But so that's what was a bit odd. So it's almost like there's this kind of weird dance that Roderick and the narrator do, and it's almost like there's some kind of past that they had, but we're never really we're not privy to what kind of boyhood relationship they had, where they go out and fish together and catch frogs, or Or did they just go to school together and they kind of knew each other in the one-room schoolhouse? Or did they hang out and go for milk and cookies at each other's houses? We don't really know what kind of relationship these two had. Though they're apparently close, though he never reflects about what that closeness means. So we're kind of like left like trying to pick up the pieces, what exactly this means. Which I said before is basic Poe. We're thrown into the middle of a story.
His sister as his twin, they did share an incommunicable connection that critics conclude may be either incestuous or metaphysical. And they both had maybe extrasensory relationship embodying a single entity, but they don't go into anything else.
But that's quite common with twins.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, if you look at documentaries with twins, sorry, Conrad.
No, go ahead. I'm hanging on every word.
Well, normally what you find with twins, and this is not with all twins, but with most twins, and they do documentaries on this, and there's plenty of research you can do on this, that sometimes twins will come up with their own secret language.
Yep.
They'll where they can communicate with each other. There are stories where one twin will be living on one side of the country, married to someone, and the other twin's on the other side of the country, and then something happens to that twin, and the twin knows about it, wakes up, and has to call the twin to find out what's going on. They have like this bond. They do tend to be identical. I don't know if this works with fraternity twins, like these two are, because they're not identical. One's male, one's female, but they do have that kind of connection. And I guess you're spending every waking moment. I mean, there are twins that basically live their whole lives, never get married, and they die together. Right. And they always tend to die within a week or two with each other as well.
Yeah, they die close to each other. Yes, I've heard of that.
So
I wonder
what do
if
you
that may
think
be the
about the
case.
narrator? What do you think, Rod, about the narrator in the relationship with Roderick?
Well, I think that the entire theme is about mental issues, and the house is representative of that. The poem that's read is representative of that. So I'm beginning to wonder if maybe
Just
Roger.
Deterioration.
Yeah, I'm not Roger. Why do I want to keep calling him that? Roderick. I think Madeleine represents a sane side of him that seems to be escaping. She doesn't speak. She moves very furtively through the house, unlike the woman in the movie who was a major character.
But they don't ever say in the story that she was kind of okay. But if you bury somebody alive, they're probably going to be a little fucked up if they get out of that casket and eventually escape it. I mean, that would make anybody mad and insane. I mean, that would be the horrifying thing.
Well, why did he do it? Why did he inter her?
I think that it said that he knew he had to
end the line, the bloodline.
Well, I think also, they sit there and to think that basically, you're dealing with themes. He's a hypochondriac, Roderick is.
Right.
If he needs total silence, everything has to be very, very bland, which, they do cover a bit better in the movie than they do here. They kind of here mention it as like a side note, almost like a footnote to what's going on here. But, they do mention that, with him, killing her is kind of foretelling his own history, what's going to happen to him. So burying a sister would basically bring the conclusion of what's going to happen to him, sort of thing, that the death. Because this whole story is about basically death. And it's what you said about the House of Usher. See, I thought as the Ushers and the house of being one and the same. Right. So therefore, it's like, and I was sitting there saying before you joined that the house and the family, if you look at a family home, the family home is the home, and that represents the family. And once that family gets splintered or broken, the house becomes splintered or broken itself. Maybe not in a literal tense, but in a philosophical tense.
Right.
And I do think that you also have two people who shut themselves off from the outside world with no outside influences. And if you got two people with these strong personalities who are, filled with hypochondriacs and full of their own worth, they are going to deteriorate each other. Right. It's a bit like if you're really depressed, the last thing you want to do is invite someone depressed over to be with you 24 hours a day, because you'll both end up killing yourself.
Oh, misery loves company. Isn't that how the saying goes?
Yeah, but you do need a little spice of life. You need someone to bring you up. You don't want someone to keep you down, because if you got if you're Debbie Downer and you invite over Dougie Downer, trust me, the Downers are not going to last very long in this world. So.
But what you said was very telling, Keith. How from the outside it's rather obvious that there's a big crack right down the middle of this building. Mm-hmm. And you can even see through it. I mean, if you can see the sky and whatever, I mean, it's separated. It's completely, it's not even together anymore. But when they go in the house, they move freely about the house, never, and there's no evidence that there's a crack at all. There's something significant there.
Right, exactly.
And that's why I think the narrator, you can't be trusted. You can't trust him with what he's telling you. And also, you're seeing things through his eyes, but even when he has a conversation with Roderick, he doesn't really let Roderick talk. He's like filling in the words for Roderick. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's like Roderick's this and that, da, 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 da. And when he does have a conversation with Roderick, it's never about his health or anything like this. He tells us about Roderick's health, but we never hear it from Roderick's own mouth, which is quite telling, basically. So basically, the narrator's like, for all we know, if this was a true story, the narrator's probably killed them and run off and made up this story, because that's what it sounds like. Because there's not a lot of it's kind of a fictionalized fantasy world that we're living in, and with the story I found quite interesting.
Well, he did kind of get inspired by the story it was a story that was based upon events in Hezekiah Usher House. It was located in a 3-block area of Boston. That's Boston, kind of like Boston Common area. Anybody that's been to Boston knows what that is. It's like their Central Park, kind of. It's really actually beautiful. But he talks about the house, I guess, was built in 1684 and torn down or relocated in the 1830s. And he says sources indicated a sailor and his young wife of the older owner were caught and entombed in their trysting spot by her husband. And I guess when the house was torn down, the 2 bodies in an embrace were actually found in a cavity in the cellar. So the story already has morbid, beginnings for inspiration anyway.
That's very interesting, because isn't that how the Hunchback of Notre Dame ends as well?
Yeah.
Don't they find 2 skeletons embraced?
Yeah, it's Quasimodo.
It's Esmeralda and him, and I forget what his name was. Oh, Quasimodo.
Quasimodo.
He's
no
not
one
a
ever.
Quasimodo.
And they call these novels like the romantic novels and whatnot, but they're really sad. I don't think Poe is considered a romantic, but
no.
But oh God, who wrote that? Now it's going to drive me nuts. Who wrote The Hunchback of Notre Dame? He wrote
Hugo.
Too,
Victor Hugo.
Yeah,
Victor Hugo wrote it.
Yeah, okay.
And that fantastic comedy Four de Force, Les Miserables. He was a very depressing person.
Oh my God, more required reading in 10th grade.
I read that. I read that in French, actually.
Yeah, we had to read it in French as well. I couldn't believe it. It was like, I can't speak French. Why am I reading this in French?
What school
were
you in then, Keith? Was that IHC?
No, I read it on my own in French.
You read it on your own in French. Cool.
On your own?
Yeah. I read it because I wanted to. Well, I read it in French? English first. And then I wanted to read it in French because I thought that there's stuff in the English translation that seemed to be a bit more winding than it needed to be. And when I read it in French, it was a lot more shorter and more precise what was being said. Where I think the English translation was just very wordy. And I found that when I read it in French,
translation.
I just found the story a lot more sharper.
Well, it's funny. The other day I was talking to some people who are fixing my house here, and they said they were talking about the different pieces of literature they had read and how they had to read like A Tale of Two Cities in high school.
Right.
And I said, "Did you like that story?" And he said, "Yeah, I didn't like that. Yeah, I got through it, but all that Val Jean stuff just didn't do a thing for me." I said, "That's not that book."
That Val Jean.
I'm surprised he knew who Val Jean was. Yeah, he must have read the Les Miserables. How else would he know who that character is?
Yeah, Valjean. Well, you're better off just watching the musical because that gives you the whole story without all the pomp and circumstance.
And you get that great song, too, on top of that. That Susan Boyle sang on TV.
Yeah, I Dreamed a Dream.
I Dreamed a Dream, she did a great rendition of that.
I did find that, that my nieces in Spain are reading, and they're reading the full text of Don Quixote at the minute. So,
Oh, cool.
Oh my!
which that's
It's
a long,
important to read
winding
those
story
things.
that has a
It
lot of,
is.
it's all about allegory, but it's just not, it's just a story of allegories. So it's basically like, it's like, I guess it's a bit like reading Canterbury Tales,
Yeah.
but a lot thicker in 2 volumes.
Canterbury Tales was so hard. I mean, Canterbury Tales was so hard to get through, but I did. And now I just have a greater appreciation of it. It's really scary because I will go back and pull it up and read some of it. I mean,
Well, yeah, it's just a bunch of perverts on a road, isn't it? So.
yeah, basically. I wonder where Chaucer's brain was at.
I mean, what's another quite interesting thing about The Fall of the House of Usher is that when the story came out, it was being criticized for being too formulaic. So by the time this came out, Poe had already had his formula down for stories, and he did Morella, Ligeia, and a bunch of other stories that kind of fit this theme. And I guess that we've hit Ligeia right after Christmas, and I guess we can actually see themes starting to come out of Poe's work. You know, buried alive, death, a woman that's loved for but dies, buried alive, seems to be scratching her way out of the coffin, or being haunted by the dead woman. And I guess I can understand why at this time that this came out, maybe that's why this would be considered one of those, because it does seem like it's a bit like Stephen King. We are developing a formula now, so it'd be quite interesting when we get to the other ones, like some of the other stories that we have covered, like Mask of the Red Death, doesn't pertain to this theme. Though I do find the ones that do deal with buried alive and death and all the other stuff with it seem to be a bit more harder to read. I enjoyed reading this, but I did find this a hard read. I had to concentrate while reading this.
It does say, Rod, though, that critics, they did say it prompted a lot of critics to analyze it as a description of the human psyche, comparing, for instance, the house to the unconscious and the central crack to a split personality. And an incestuous relationship between Roderick and Madeleine is never explicitly stated, but seems implied by the strange attachment between the two. So you weren't far off the mark. I don't know about the incest. I didn't get that at all, but there was there was somebody that said they were talking about necrophilia involved with the story, and I didn't get that either.
No, I didn't pick that up either. But I guess I mean, incestuous, if you take it like an incestuous relationship, I mean, I guess when you could take incestuous, you can mean the sex part of it. But incestuous could be people that are so entwined in each other's lives, so there might not be any sex involved. So they might mean incestuous that way.
Psychological.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, they do play off each other quite morbidly.
More so in the film than they do in the book, but in the story. But I mean, she's kind of like, she just kind of flits in and out. She's really not there long. And her big part of the, of the story is when she falls on him and he immediately dies of fear. I don't know what she dies of, but he died of fear.
Well, I think another thing that's quite interesting is that Poe, I don't know if Poe at this time was into being he's on his way of becoming a drug addict and alcoholic, and he does mention opium twice in the story.
He did.
So maybe the narrator is an opium addict for all we know. So that might be another reason why we have an untrustworthy narrator. Because the narrator is the one that's mentioning opium. He's not mentioning Roderick doing opium. He's just mentioning opium for the sake of mentioning opium. It's like it's a bit like,
it was a big thing back then. People were starting to have the opium parlors and.
Yeah, but it's almost like the thing about if someone's let's say someone's a marijuana smoker. And though they might not smoke it in front of you, they have a habit of just mentioning it all the time, and you're like, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I don't have any.
Well, I do notice that a lot. Yeah,
but people who are like really into like doing drugs or opium or marijuana or something like that, they tend to mention it for no. They'll be telling you a story, and in the middle of it, they're like, and marijuana, and you're like, well, what does that have to do?
Why are you interjecting that tidbit of information? It's sort of like meth heads climbing telephone poles while they're high, naked. I don't know why they do that here in Dallas.
And you're just thinking to yourself, like, you're talking about the New Orleans flood. Where does marijuana come into it? So it's like, so maybe that's the reason why we, and so let's sit there and say that on the off chance that he is, because the narrator does describe Roderick's appearance as being an irreclaimable eaten opium eater. And that's how he describes him. So it's like, so obviously this guy knows about opium.
Well, you think Poe's describing himself, basically?
Well, opium was involved in Lygia as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember?
Could have been a Poe thing.
Well, I mean, to be honest...
opium eater. What were they eating?
Well, they used to call opium eaters at that time. I mean, it's probably, maybe it was like, a joint smoker or acid taker, or you know what I mean, where it would have some kind of slang. Probably the slang of the time or something like that. Yeah. Which doesn't mean they were actually eating it. It's just some kind of weird slang that they came up with. I'm imagining. If any of our listeners are out there, can clear that story up.
Yes, please do. We don't know enough about opium, so if anybody out there eats opium, feel free.
Well, I don't even know if opium's a thing nowadays. Like, I don't know.
I bet you if you get your hands on it, people do it.
Well, but I do think, that, we also have to remember that when Poe's life at this time, his wife, who is slowly dying, probably was taking opium and all these other drugs at the same time. That's what they did. They just to make them that was the painkiller of the day. They hadn't learned to chew on tree bark for aspirin yet, so that might be it. So is there any other information that people want to share about the fall of the House of Usher before we move on to the
Rod,
film?
you came in a few minutes
well
late.
I read it the first time I read it was in the fourth grade. And,
fourth grade? You are an overachiever.
In a Catholic school. I don't know why we read this, but I do remember interpreting the poem of The Haunted Palace in conjunction with that story. And it can actually be taken out completely from the story. It doesn't further anything outside of giving you some insight into, whether Roderick and his sister are truly insane. And if he has to end the line, that's what he's so worked up about. He has to end the bloodline.
Well, didn't he think it was infectious? And if it ever got out there, Well,
no, that's more the film than it is.
That's more the film. Yeah, okay, I digress.
Yeah, the short story doesn't really say what his. I mean, we know that Roderick's inflicted with sensory disturbance. So basically, that means hearing, seeing, tasting. So all his senses are whatever they are. So everything, and that's part of the short story. So therefore, that's the reason why there's certain music he can listen to and a lot of music he can't listen to.
People are like that, though. People are hypersensitive to a lot of stuff. So that's totally believable.
And I think that, but this doesn't seem like something he was born with. This is something.
Do you think he's a hypochondriac to some extent too?
Well, or maybe the thing is we know that Roderick doesn't go out outside. We know the sister doesn't go outside, so we're not really made aware of exactly, who diagnosed Roderick. We don't know if that's a diagnosis that he came up with, or maybe it is something that he actually suffers from. We don't know, but we do know that he doesn't leave the house for whatever reasons, and he's obsessed with death. But then again, I do think the obsession with death has more to do with the
time period.
No, I think it has more to do with the relationship that you have between the brother and sister, how they don't leave the house, they don't mix with people. And I do think that, I say it with, I can't really go into too much detail about my patients, but if I look at my patients, for instance, and the patients who don't mix or do something within their lives, and they spend their lives in a solitary confinement amongst themselves with nothing but the TV to keep them company, then what you will see is you will get this preoccupation and a deterioration of health. You'll get a deterioration of their mental health, and you get a deterioration of what's important and what's not important.
Right.
And so what happens with the deterioration, you get a hypersensitive version of self-importance. So it's a bit like when to break it down to, without going into too many medical terms, but let's break it down to simple terms. It'd be a bit like if your leg hurts, but if you keep busy, you forget that your leg hurts. But if you stay still stable and you sit home and you concentrate on your leg hurts more and more to the point that it feels like it's falling off. Right. And this is kind of the state that people can get themselves into. And then what basically happens is hoarders, I guess, is another way. I guess you can move the House of Ushers to a hoarder. And normally the hoarders go through a hoarding experience because of loss, a huge loss. And because they lost someone and couldn't save them, so they decide to hold on to everything. And they hold on to everything. And
that's very easy to do. I mean, I've had to get rid of things in the past after Justin left. So, you know, I mean, you want to keep all those things. So,
but it's also buying your happiness. So going out and buying stuff just for the sake of buying because this is going to make you happy, even though that's not going to fix what's going on inside you.
Right. So it is a form of hypochondria.
It's but it's not what hypochondriac is. You thrive on being sick. That's hypochondriac is having a thrive on being sick. When you get into that depressed state, which we find Roderick and Madeleine seem to be in, is basically they're so into their own head that they don't actually see. Hypochondriac is basically someone who always wants it because and they do it because they want the attention for being sick. They want to be sick because if there's something wrong, then they'll get, like people on Facebook is like, oh, I've just had I can't believe my head hurts so much. And they want people to go, oh, don't worry, tomorrow's a better day. Your head will feel better tomorrow, blah-de-da-de-da. Or someone who goes through a breakup, decide to use Facebook as a means of using that. And I was guilty of that 8 years ago. So, and unfortunately,
we were all different 8 years. And we have learned in 8 years what you can post and what you can't post.
Well, I just put it this way. It comes back and haunts you when your memories pop up from, it's like, and I look at it and go, Jesus Christ.
Yes, it does. Nothing ever deletes completely.
But like a hypochondriac, and at that time for myself, I found myself posting crap. I was like, oh, I met someone. Could this be a new beginning? And all this other multi bullshit that I'm totally embarrassed of by now. And I know, and it's basically I was feeding off the comments. Oh, don't worry, oh, this might be a good start. Good on you, Keith, and all this other crap. And hypochondriac is a bit like that. If you're a hypochondriac, you oh my God, this is and it's because you want, and you tell people when you're hypochondriac. Roderick's not really telling anyone what's wrong. He's not looking for people to give him feeling sorry for him. He's just what he is. So that's why I say he's more in maybe a delusional medical state than he is a hypochondriac. So
either or though, his sister and him have fed off each other and made their mental psychosis that much more worse.
Well, that's the reason why I say that. That's the reason why there's a crack, because the family's cracked and broken. And when they finally die, the end of the Usher line, the house is the family line is the house. If there was any, and the thing is, if they had a cousin, aunt, uncle, son or daughter, they could have. Well, no, there's no servant in the story.
There isn't one. There isn't. Okay.
But so what would have happened basically is that the house would have stayed intact, because then the house would have gone on to the next generation.
Right.
But because there is no generation to go to, the house falls apart and goes back into the earth, like the Ushers never existed. Yeah. Which is basically an allegory to what happens when we die. When we die, basically, we're only as good as the people who remember us. And then after we die, and after the next generation die, we won't be remembered. And
but will we really care? We'll be dead.
No, we won't be. But if you're the last of your family line, that means your family line dies.
Yeah, that's kind of sad.
And there will be and I think that the house symbolizes that when they both die, the house goes into the ground, and it's like it never existed. Because it's not like the house falls down and there's like, the chimney's still standing, like a house fire that's, left. There's no foundation, everything sinks down to the ground like Carrie.
Oh, before we switch gears, they say that the house is ancient. Was it brought over in the story brick by brick from the motherland?
Some of the old houses during this time period were brought over from the old land. But who knows with this?
Right. Well, they say that in the movie, don't they?
The movie does flourish a little bit more information on the House of Usher, which I do think that the changes that they make in the movie, which we'll get to next,
right?
I think make a little bit more sense and makes this story a little bit more comprehensible. I think. Yes. I think it does a better job at making it comprehensible, which is kind of bizarre because, well, we'll go into that now. So we just go into the film now.
Yes, because we're
Sure.
running out of because we're going that way anyway. But speaking of the film, who did that artwork? Was that supposed to be postmodern impressionism that they snuck into the film?
That's 1960s. I need another joint kind of artwork.
I thought Ron would jump on that one.
So this brings us to the House of Usher. The House of Usher, also known as The Fall of the House of Usher and The Mysterious House of Usher, is a 1960 American horror film directed by Roderick Corman and is written by Richard Matheson. Richard Matheson also wrote I Am Legend, and he's also most famous for most of the Twilight Zone episodes that he wrote as well. And it's from the short story, of course, The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. The film was the first of 8 Corman Poe feature films. It stars Vincent Price, Myrna Fahey, Mark Damon, and Harry Ellerbee. In 2005, the film was listed with the United States National Film Registry as being deemed culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. Versions exist on DVD, and with the running times are normally between 76 and 80 minutes. Though if you do buy it on Blu-ray and the special Vincent Price collection, or to the special Blu-ray, we do have the 80-minute versions, and that's what's being released now. So what we're going to do is cut to the trailer. We'll be right back after the trailer.
Only the incomparable genius of Edgar Allan Poe could knit them so closely together. The burning passions of the purest of loves. The deadly passions of the madly prurient.
Madeleine, you're leaving this house with me tomorrow.
Only I could.
For hundreds of years, evil thoughts and evil deeds have been committed within these walls. The house itself is evil now.
Here they all are. Ushers.
This is monstrous.
It waits for me, because very soon I shall be dead.
Oh, Madeleine, come away with me now.
Where is she? You buried your own sister alive?
I did. But she's dead now.
The master hand of the macabre creates its masterpiece.
Hello, welcome back to Literary Legends Podcast, and now we're discussing House of Usher, the 1960 American horror film with Roger Corman and Vincent Price. So, over to you, Rod. What are your thoughts of House of Usher?
Well, House of Usher is one of my favorite Vincent Price movies, and
Same.
I'll tell you why. It's for a number of reasons. First of all, I will give you a little bit of background. I had just started going to see horror films at that time. I was probably about 6 years old. And I remember I went with my parents to see a Jerry Lewis movie called The Ladies' Man at this local cinema. Remember that? That's an old one.
My
where
husband
he
was
like,
watching that the other night ago. He made Asher watch it.
It's very funny. It
was Asher 7, and he loved it. He was just sitting there laughing, yeah.
Yeah, he was like a houseboy for all these single women.
Yeah.
And
it was entertaining.
And the trailers that they showed, which we used to call previews in those days, one of them was for The Fall of the House of Usher, and it was sumptuous, you know. American International, which was not a name that I associated with sumptuous. I mean, that was a Hammer film. Hammer
Right.
films look like this. This is not what was for American International. Was a lot of bebop teens and their hot rods, and there was a monster in it, and maybe some ghosts and stuff like that, or something from outer space. It was never what I saw in this preview. So then I wanted to see it, of course, and when I went to see it, I was completely taken aback, first of all, by his appearance. He looks different, more different in that movie than any movie I've ever seen him in.
The blonde hair and everything, yeah.
Yeah. Is it blonde or white?
White or blonde?
I think it's white.
Is it white? Okay. It's just so
like silvery white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was like a really bright. It was a bright color.
Well, plus he's clean shaven. He's clean shaven there too, which is something you very rarely saw. So he gave a completely different look to his performance, and he looked very imposing. Usually Vincent Price tends to stoop in his movies. I don't know if you've noticed that. It must be because he was so tall.
Yeah,
but
he does have this slight stoop. He always had a slight stoop, I've noticed.
Yeah, but he doesn't have it in this movie. He's very tall. And he shrinks. He shrinks the narrator, who's not really the narrator. He's the boyfriend of Madeleine in this movie. But I enjoyed it. I thought, it was a horror film for literary horror fans.
Right.
There were no monsters. The monster was in the mind.
Exactly.
And what the monster was in the house too, but which represented the mind. And in the end, when he leaves, and it's such a somber moment with a little quote from Poe about the house sinking in and the tar and covering it. It just looks so dreamlike. So it's really, I think, of all the AIP Cormans and Edgar Allan Poe's, I do like Mask of the Red Death better because I think it's a quality production from start to stop.
Right.
But this one is next. This one is second, definitely.
See, I liked the changes that they made to the short story. Now, a lot of times I find that this is probably the most complete Poe story that we get in film. Because normally what we get with Roger Corman production is we get a lot of filler in the beginning and the final third's the short story. Here, the whole movie is the story, which I thought was quite interesting because we actually haven't got that yet in any of the things we did. Even Ligeia kind of had like this kind of a shaky beginning, and then finally went into the story, and then we ended with the story. But I found with the House of Usher, I quite liked that it was the full story, though we did have the changes. But I think the changes work because I think that if the Philip Winthrop didn't have the love interest in Madeleine, and I do think, I guess we can assume that Roderick and Madeleine are not twins here. If they are, they came out of the womb quite a few years apart from each other. But I do think that because there's a relationship between Philip and Madeleine, and Madeleine had a past in Boston, we do get more of an understanding. And then when she does die, and the heart wrench that Philip goes through, I think really helps us get into the story, and we actually do feel that because we do feel that he's crying and everything like that. I think that actually helps with the story, but I also think that Matheson's very, very clever, and Corman's very, very clever by going back into the story and basically, having her buried alive and trying to get out, and then kind of dipping back into the story and giving us all the highlights from the story of Poe's, but at the same time giving us a story that's a bit more understanding and has a lot more emotional resonance than the short story.
I didn't know they only shot this in 15 days. I would have thought it would be more. That's quick. That is like quick.
Corman's like Dan Curtis.
I was just going to say, I wasn't going to say it, but I was thinking it.
Yeah.
Would you say the interior of the house was similar to what was in the book?
I think that what we got is a better understanding of the house than we get in the book. The book, we kind of get the essence of the house, and the house is kind of a character in the book. But I think that the house is, the reason why the house is a character, because I think the house is the Ushers. Where here, I think we do get the deterioration of the house. We do get like the staircase that's crumbling and turning to dust, and everything's turning to dust, and everything has. What we don't have in the book is that we actually get to see the rooms, and the rooms are faded. You can see that there was once a glory
bright
to them.
And vibrant.
Yeah, but you can see that everything's kind of there's like I think they did fantastic with this with the deadened colors, outside of her 1960s headboard, but nice lime green headboard. But I do think overall we do kind of get that. We do get the house deteriorating over period, and we get like the house shaking, and there's a vibration in the house that we don't get in the short story. And it seems like the house is vibrating and stuff like this as things are becoming more and more unsettled between Roderick and Madeleine, I notice in the film. So I have to sit there and say my hat's off to Richard Matheson. I do give him credit because I think he wrote a really strong script for this.
Yeah, he fleshed it out. He really did. Mm-hmm. And I like the little prickly relationship between, Philip and Roderick. They weren't friendly to one another at all. And
but it wasn't
They're sort of antagonists towards each other.
But it wasn't evil. It's almost like Roderick is being short with him because, well, it's not even rivalry. It's because I think for some reason
he knows
Roderick knows what the future of Madeleine holds, and he knows that Madeleine's sick, and that Madeleine can't leave because if she leaves, basically that their marriage is going to be like worst marriage in history because and he's kind of like trying to save Philip at the same time. And I quite like that. It's all. I think the film is all areas of gray. It's not black and white. None of it's black and white at all. Even the servant's not black and white. It's like it's all areas of gray. He's gonna. He's been with the Ushers since a young boy. He's gonna stay with the Ushers, but he also shows kindness to Philip. He's like, do you want breakfast? Here you go. Okay. And then he goes, I'm gonna take this up. We're gonna leave tomorrow. And he's like, he knows the story. It is, but he's not gonna like, it's not his place to say anything. And even when he leaves and he's totally depressed and distraught about the death of Madeleine, he's like, do you need an extra coat? Do you need this? Do you need that?
Well, they both knew. Even the servant knew though that they interred her alive. He knew she wasn't dead yet.
Well, I wonder if the servant knew it. I don't think the servant did know it. I think Roger.
Don't think so either.
I mean, when they're in the chapel, isn't there a scene where
dream sequence.
She starts to breathe or something happens and Roger sees it?
Wasn't there? Dream sequence.
I love that dream.
Well, there was later. There was a dream sequence that Philip had, and that's when all the ancestors of the Ushers were at a service for Marilyn. I mean, Marilyn. Marilyn Monroe, who made an appearance.
People too. They were all murderers.
Well, let me introduce you to my family. This is my grandmother. She was a harlot and a drug addict and a murderess. This is my father's mother. She was a fortune teller, but she was also schizophrenic. They didn't have terms like that in those days. But nobody was a good person, and their portrait definitely showed that there was something wrong somewhere.
That's what I was saying. Where those portraits come from? Those were like some wild art.
Well, that was
when
1960s night gallery art.
Yes, it was like a night gallery art. Well, some of that night gallery stuff looks better than this.
Yeah.
These were like paint by number grotesqueries. But I think at that point, isn't that when Roderick confesses that the house is alive, that the house is actually the monster, the evil?
Yeah. Well, I think the reason why he does that is because AIP didn't want to make this film because they're so used to making monster movies, the attack.
Yeah, I read that too.
Right.
And I think Vincent Price, if you buy the Vincent Price collection on Blu-ray, in front of all these, Vincent Price hosted a series in Philadelphia on PBS that they were showing these films, and so he did a beginning, and he goes, "This is the Vincent Price film festival. We're doing House of Usher," and then you talk about the House of Usher and what they were doing and how they're making it, and then the movie would show, and at the end of it, then he would do an epilogue about it. And he states during this interview, and I suggest if you're a Vincent Price fan and if you are a Roger Corman fan as far as the Poe films go, to buy the Vincent Price by Screen Factory collection. There's three collections. They're a bit pricey, but the sound quality, the extras, the documentaries, the Vincent Price stuff that's in it is fantastic. But what he says in here is that they didn't want to make it because they're so used to making black and white monster movies. so Roger Corman goes, well, if you give me the funding, the thing is, there is a monster movie. The house is the monster. Right. So that's why Roderick has that one line in here, because they had to add this line to make this to show that there's a monster in the movie. So that way they had the funding to make the film go. But at the same time, this is almost a forerunner of The Haunting that we would get 5-6 years later.
Yeah.
So I think it was a very wise choice to actually mention the house as a character. Plus, and in the story, the house is a character anyway. So in the original story,
I have to ask you guys. There was just something that just kind of just popped up. They said that they weren't going to. They said that under the low budget circumstances, Vincent Price and Myrna Fahey would not be blamed for portraying the decadent ushers with arch affectation or whatever they were trying to say. Affectation. Thank you. I cannot see today. Right. And they said nor Mark Damon held to the account for the traces of his Brooklynese accent. I didn't catch that. Did you guys catch the Brooklynese in his accent?
I didn't.
I find these Roger Corman films, the ones that are shot in America, they do tend to be, they kind of do the Alfred Hitchcock school of acting, that if you're rich and influential, you have a British accent, and if you're common, you have a New York accent.
Okay, I was just wondering.
Or you have a really strong American accent. And I think the Roger Corman Poe films kind of deal with that. If the person's really rich, it's like they have like a really rich English accent, which Vincent Price normally tends to have. But then if a poor person or a commoner comes on, they sound like they just come up from Brooklyn or the Bronx or Boston.
How funny, because that's true when you go back to think of all the movies that you've seen, and that really must have been the norm.
Well, it's like the villains as well. Villains are always English. They always have like an English accent. The villains are, I guess, because they don't want to show an American villain. So, but I do think, for whatever reasons those are, I do think that. So basically, what's quite interesting is that we get Madeleine, though. To be honest, and I don't know if this is in her portrayal, Myrna Fahey. I'm not too familiar with this actress anyway, but I
don't recall seeing her in anything else. I'm gonna have to look.
Oh yeah, she's been. If you ever watch Perry Mason, she's been in about 5 of those. Oh, okay. And I went on a Perry Mason rush over the summer, and she was in quite a few of them. At first I thought, where have I seen that actress? Because her hair was much more contemporary, of course, but the face was very familiar. And then I realized that she was in House of Usher. She was much more animated in the show than she was in the movie.
I think
because at the end,
I think that she's probably a cheap actress as well.
Well, she was episodic TV, so I would say that she was, hey, you're going to be on the big screen. But I also think that at the time, from what I remember, it seemed like a very big deal that Vincent Price was working with a place like AIP. Yeah. AIP never had big stars working there. Yeah. He was a major star.
Well, it depends on, I thought he was a major star. A lot of people always say, well, he didn't get an Oscar, but I think he embraced what he did, no matter what, whether it was Oscar nominated, anything. He
was a box office draw, though.
Yeah.
And I had to sit there and say, I imagine the budget for this probably went to Vincent Price and the sets.
Right.
And so what's ever left over, and you got to remember they have a dream sequence they're going to film, so that was probably took a big chunk of it.
That was pretty crazy too. That dream sequence, that was just totally bizarre. That was like an acid
with a lot of colors and filters and things like that. It was very eerie.
Acid trip.
Yeah, they made the most of they had a very small cast, and they made the most of it. They made the most of everything.
Yeah.
That was the first. I remember in the late 60s, probably around 67 or 68, AIP, who had then the Witchfinder General, but it was called Conquer a Worm in the U.S., was out, and I went to see that. And they had at the drive-in, they had a 5-movie Poe extravaganza, starting with House of Usher, and it went all the way up through what ones were there. And I watched them all, I watched 3 of them in a row. And the first thing I noticed that all the candles were always red, and whenever they sat at the dinner table to drink wine, the glasses were the same in every movie.
No kidding.
But the biggest thing was the movies that ended in an inferno, it was the same inferno all the time.
Oh, no kidding.
a board falling and it was in flames. It was in every single one. And
Well,
there's a scene where
the ceiling fire is stock footage, isn't it? Obviously.
Right.
Yeah, it's stock footage of a barn. That's what I read. But it looks good. It fits.
Yeah, I thought they stole it from Gone with the Wind. when Anna's is burning, I thought it was that stock footage because it kind of.
Oh, I wonder if they could do that. I mean,
I don't think they take that. I think Gone with the Wind. I don't know if that was stock footage. I think they actually they actually had to burn stuff down in one take. But
I'm saying but what they would normally do with films is that if they spent money on like a special effect, then what they'll do is they'll take that part. They'll take that segment and you can buy that as stock footage for other films.
Right.
So that way they wouldn't have to do
tidbit.
So that way they wouldn't have to redo. I mean, I think they use, but then again, that was David Selznick. So I imagine David Selznick, when the burning in Rebecca, they probably just took the same burning and put it in black and white to go. Okay,
I'm going to go back and look at those on YouTube now because that's going to.
Oh no, they didn't do that.
Oh, they didn't do that.
Rebecca, you can see Judith Anderson in the Inferno when it's in the bedroom. You can see her, so you know that's
I'm talking about when they do a close up of the fire. You know, when they do like a pan with nobody in it, and they just do a close up of the fire. Sometimes that's like when the house is like in House of Usher when it's burning. You see the ceiling, but the ceiling's the rafters. So I just assume that they use stock footage from somewhere. So.
Yeah, they did. That was stock footage. And if you notice, when they show the flames, it looks like a superimposed house with the windows cut out over some flame. I mean, there's no flames licking out of the window. And
well, the house doesn't exist, does it? I mean, isn't that just a...
it was all fake. Yeah, it was matte paintings, yeah. They always use matte paintings. But they did good ones. It added a weird quality to it.
I liked it.
Say, in Gone with the Wind, when they did the burning of Atlanta, that was before they had even cast Vivian Leigh as Scarlet, and so that's a stunt woman that you see in the carriage. And what you see burning in the background is the gate from King Kong. You know, where he breaks into the village. They burnt that.
Oh yeah, no kidding.
And you can tell us what it is if you.
Well, you're
if you know
perceptive,
what you're
Rod. That's why I like having.
Oh,
you
I was told that. I read that, but then I saw the movie.
I'm gonna have to go look now. That's gonna bug me. I'm looking.
Yeah, you see it. It's right in back of them, and then it just collapses in on itself. But it's the gate, you know, that they had to keep Kong out, and he broke through, and all that stuff. It's that. And that was on the back lot of, I don't know, RKO or something like that. Because Gone with the Wind was an independent production. It was independent.
It was a David O. Selznick production. That's what it says, but it doesn't.
Yeah. David O. Selznick wasn't. Yeah, David O. Selznick wasn't with a studio. He had his own studio.
Yeah.
Right, and then he had a releasing company. That's what MGM was. So they.
But did he take over RKO at one point? Or
that was Howard Hughes who took over. Howard Hughes took over RKO.
And then
Lucille Ball and
stuff.
Okay.
Well, Lucy and Desi bought it later and turned it into Desi Lou years later. So,
Lucy was a smart businesswoman. I mean, the thing is, I guess going back to the House of Usher,
we just get off on tangents again.
No, well, our tangents actually do pertain to what we're talking about, so that's quite good. But I do think that, you know, if you look at the cost of this movie, you know, it had a $300,000 budget, and it's quite nice to see a film that has that budget and see everything on the screen. I think you see it all. You see all $300,000 worth, and I do give them that. And with Myrna Fahey, I'm not saying anything against her performance because I think she's very, very good. I just think that from what she's given, she's kind of, you're never quite sure if she's really, really sick or not. And I do think that it probably would have been quite nice if we had a little bit more, her being a bit more weak or a bit more shortness of breath or something to actually bring that character out a bit more to find out. So we're kind of left whether is Roderick making this up. Is she really ill or is she not ill? So we're not quite, because she just seems quite healthy. She seems quite healthy, robust, and pink-cheeked for someone who's supposed to be as ill as Roderick keeps saying about her. But I think that has more to do with probably makeup design and maybe the way the cast is right. Because even when she's tired, she's like, you don't, maybe if you saw her eating more of the bland food because she couldn't deal with rich food, or maybe maybe she should have put some of
They're
that
eating
mush in.
porridge or whatever. But
Of
really
her
quick,
gruel.
before I lose it. Okay, Rod, it says in order to make way for the elaborate scenes in the film Gone with the Wind, they decided they should burn off as many of the old sets on the back lot at MGM as they could, including the great gates which stood so ominously in King Kong. So you're right, they did. I never knew that.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
And you can see it. You can tell. If you know what
didn't. I was
to
gonna
look for,
look.
you can see it. It's.
Okay.
I think it's the very last scene as they go by in there. I don't think Clark Gable was really the one running that horse and buggy, but you see it collapsing, and that's the last scene you see of Atlanta.
Yeah.
To
where
be
it's
honest,
burning.
in those days, I'm surprised no one died when they were burning all that down.
I don't think they had OSHA rules near as much as they do these days. Now
Well,
they just
even-
cry if they don't get bottled water and a chocolate trailer. So.
Even in the Poe films, whenever they have an inferno, I mean, you see people right in there. I mean, and that's a lot of fire. So that's supposed to be all contained and done in such a way as to that they can shut it off quickly, I would assume. It must be gas that's doing it, But I thought House of Usher was quite a spectacular film. Now that I've seen it, I've noticed that it does look a little chintzy around the edges. I watched it on DVD, but I didn't watch it on Blu-ray, so I assume, like on Blu-ray, can you see, does the set look still as sumptuous or what?
Yeah, it does. I mean, the thing is, with the Blu-ray, they cleaned up the film, and so all the colors are very, very bright and vibrant. The makeup's vibrant. I have to sit there and say that sometimes with the Blu-ray, that sometimes when they do close-ups of people, you can see the hair weaving of the wigs, and you don't get that, which I think was quite
That's
well
true.
done.
The Blu-ray
that's
does really
interesting.
go in.
Yeah, but I have to sit there and say that it looked very, very voluptuous, and I guess it's kind of funny because when I bought the Vincent Price collection a couple years ago now, I did run through the whole thing. I kind of ate it up, every time, what they did one.
What else is on there?
Every year. It's got Mask of the Red Death. It's got, there's 3 volumes that they're out now. And it has all the Corman Poe films. It's got the Haunted Palace in there. It's got the one where the Roderick Matheson story that was based on I Am Legend, the Vincent Price one.
Right.
Oh, yeah. That's a good
in
movie.
there. The Abominable Dr. Phipes is in there.
Oh, yeah. Master of the World.
General.
Master of the World in there.
Yeah, it's got there as well, yeah. Though the special effect didn't do too well over the course of the time, but there is a fantastic series. And as I said before, and then there's the Vincent Price one-man show doing live where he's doing the Vincent Price, the Edgar Allan Poe stuff that's in there as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really smart set.
Well, my sisters and I actually went to see Vincent Price in 1977 when he did his Oscar Wilde performance. That was in Boston.
Fantastic.
And why we didn't go backstage is beyond me because the place wasn't packed.
Oh my
he
God!
was very good.
It was shot.
I know. We always
wrong
used to go
with you?
backstage. We never went. I mean, it's like we didn't want
Did
to
it ever
bother him
cross
or
your
something.
mind to go back and try to meet him?
No, not until years later. After he was gone, I thought, well, that's an opportunity missed. We could have gone back there and told him how much he meant to us, and he
apparently he was very amenable to his fans. Which is quite
that's what
nice.
I heard. I read too.
So.
Yeah, he was. I was very sad when he passed away.
I just so miss all those old timers, Christopher Lee and Vincent Price.
Oh yeah, Christopher Lee.
I mean, those were just. I know they look really cheesy now in comparison, but I can't. If they're on TV and I'm laying there on the couch and I'll turn one on and I'll sit there and watch the whole thing, just because I love them. They are cheesy.
I'm the same way.
Especially Christopher Lee movies, but they're great, Yeah,
Christopher Lee. I'll tell you, one of my favorite Hammer films, which a lot of people don't like, is The Gorgon. I really think that works up into the very moment when they chop the head off and you see it turn into a mannequin or whatever. But I think the atmosphere in that movie is hard to beat. It's a great story.
It is
something unusual, a Medusa. Okay, we're going to do Medusa now.
I'm going to have to look that one up and watch it now just because I haven't seen it in like 20 years. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah,
the interesting thing, the thing that's quite interesting about Vincent Price as well, he played the Invisible Man in the sequel.
That's right.
Oh, yeah, he did. And Laura, let's not forget that. That was just on TV the other day, and I watched it. That's a movie that I've never seen from beginning to end, but I've seen lots of snippets.
It's kind of odd, the movies he would show up, not even so much a cameo, but there was this one movie with, what's her name? It was called Song of Bernadette. It was about a saint.
Song of Bernadette.
Yeah, he was
Jennifer
in there.
Jones.
He was still kind of a little bit of a douchey character, but in the end, he's going, wow, all these people are coming and getting healed. Jennifer Jones, yeah. I mean, I love that. That movie just makes me cry to this day. If it's on TV, I will bawl every time Jennifer Jones is died.
Yes, the part where the nun says to her nun from her younger days says to her, "Why are you limping? Are you trying to draw attention? Yeah, you haven't suffered enough. You're not like me. My eyes are bloodshot. I don't allow them to sleep, and I scrub, stone floors. Can you
typical
give me
of
any
IHC."
Yes, and then she says, "Can you give me any reason why all the great saints have always suffered?" And she goes, "Well, I can show you something, and we don't see what it is, but whatever it is, the look of horror."
On her body, yeah.
Right. Oh, yeah. It had to be something like that. And then later on, she's talking to the doctor, and she said, he said, "She's never mentioned this to anyone?" And she said, "No."
She must be in extreme
he goes, "Well."
pain.
Yeah, they're extremely painful. And she never
that movie's so
it.
sad. You're going to make me cry. Shut up.
And Vincent Price plays a disbeliever, but in the end, he's got either throat cancer or lung cancer. I don't know what he's got.
Throat cancer.
Yeah, and he went to the grotto, and he said, I don't think he asked for forgiveness, but he said
he knew it wasn't
there.
for him. He knew he knew that the miracles weren't for people like him.
Right.
And she knew that the miracles weren't for her as well. She said, "The spring is not for me."
The spring is not, and I looked up all that stuff, and all of that was true.
Yeah,
I mean, that's all recorded fact.
I went to Catholic school for 10 years. It was ingrained in my brain. She is actually, the original Bernadette is actually encased in a glass case in France, in Lourdes, and apparently she has not deteriorated a bit. And I've seen pictures, and it's really creepy. I always wanted to go there just because.
Yeah, I read that. It said her body is incorrupt, so they couldn't it was never corrupted, and they dug it up many times before they put it on display. And they've got a mask of wax over her face, so I mean, her eyes would fall in, or she would look somewhat
you're gonna have issues
dead.
after a while. But, I don't think anybody's gonna be digging me and Keith up to see if our body's incorrupt or not.
No,
what do you think, Keith?
Not me either.
Well, I'm gonna be cremated, so there's gonna be nothing to dig up.
It's just a fascinating story. I mean, religious or not, it's a fascinating story. But he was in that movie, and he just had that small part, but he was so good at it. I just love Vincent.
Well, he was
he did a lot of those Bible. Yeah, he did a lot of those Bible pictures. He did quite
really? What other one did he do?
He did 10 Commandments.
He was in that's right. He was the taskmaster. He got beat.
Yeah, Charlton Heston
Moses
killed
kicked
him,
his ass. That's
him.
right.
Yeah.
He was a real good asshole.
And then House of Wax is like his biggest thing. That was the biggest thing.
And Dragon Wick.
That movie. Oh, Dragon Wick, which I thought was really good, and he's with Gene Tierney in that film as well, like in Laura, and he was in Leave Her to Heaven, which is another Gene Tierney movie, and he plays her boyfriend, who's also a DA, I think. He must have been a 20th Century Fox contract.
Gaslight? Did he do Gaslight?
No, he wasn't.
Like
he did the. This is what I read. I'm
Picture Dorian Gray.
Vincent Price a file. No, he did the Broadway play called Angel Street, which is the real name of Gaslight.
Right. Oh, okay.
So he played the husband on Broadway, and the woman who played his wife, the one who he's trying to gaslight, to drive insane, is the one that was in The Tingler with him, and she played a deaf mute. She's the one that she goes into the bathroom and there's a bloody hand coming out of the tub. Do you remember that scene? Did you ever see that movie?
Scene. Yeah, I love The Tingler.
The Tingler. You know what I read about that scene? That scene was actually filmed in color, but they made everything in the background, including her, through makeup and painting into black and white.
Really?
Yeah, so the hand coming out was normally filmed and the blood pouring into the sink, but everything else was painted and including her makeup to make it look like it was black and white. If you watch that scene, it does look...
because they couldn't do that.
Do you think that people had a resurgence in Vincent Price when Michael Jackson used his voice in Thriller and people's like, well,
oh, of course. Of course, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably how he got Edward Scissorhands. his last film. And he did Whales of August as well, which
Whales of August, which I've seen many times, and that was in Maine, and I remember when they were here. That was in '87. They were here, and Betty Davis and all that, and she was in. He was also with her in the Life of Elizabeth in Essex or whatever.
Yeah.
He played Sir Walter Raleigh in that one, and he was in.
That's right.
I've never seen the. He was in both Tower of Londons, and I've never seen the one. I've never seen either one, the Corman one or the one where he was with Basil Rathbone. Did you ever see those?
I have not.
No,
I probably have. I don't recall.
I think it was called Tower of London.
Tower of London. What year would that have been?
Well, one was 39, and the other one was probably 62. So they were both called the same thing, but it was about King Richard.
Versions.
Yeah, King Richard. The one that had the hunchback or whatever the heck was wrong with him.
Yeah, no, I did see Tower of London with him in it. The Roger.
Yeah, where he played King Richard.
It's on the Vincent Price 3 collection. That's how.
Right,
that's
he was on. He was the one who played.
Boris
Richard,
Karloff was in that too, was he not?
Yes, he was in the first one. It was a Universal movie, and he gets drowned in a cask of wine. They drown him.
Okay.
But I've never seen that movie. But that's when Boris Karloff was not an old man.
Amontillado. No, that's not it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thinking of a different movie.
Cask of Amontillado? No, he wasn't in that one. He wasn't in...
Diary of a Madman he was in.
Diary of a Madman.
Cry
But what was that one that you mentioned early? Cry of the Banshee. But there was one you mentioned earlier. Oh, Rebecca. Did you say Rebecca?
No. We mentioned Rebecca for the fire in this film.
He was in the House of the Seven Gables, which I've never seen.
Yes, he was.
That was in the early 40s. But he must...
Then, of course, he did those fantastic films when he came to England as well.
Yes.
Theater of Death. Fantastic. It's one of my favorites.
Oh, yes, that's one of... I remember when I went to see that was restricted because it was so violent and bloody.
Which movie
and the
is
only
that?
Thing that?
Theater of Death, which we're covering in season 4 under our UK horror. So.
Oh, okay, cool.
The only scene I found disturbing in that was where they cut out the guy's heart as a lump of flesh, a pound of flesh or whatever. From Merchant of Venice, is that where that came from? They recreated a lot of Shakespearean things, and it showed him to be a very diverse actor. He could do anything.
Well, even the Fly and the Return of the Fly as well. He's very good.
I always get it covered. I know it's cheesy and I know it's funny, but that one scene where the fly has got his head on it and he's like a human head on the fly, it just kills me all the time.
Well, which scene is this?
I have to say it's very effective though. It's more effective than the remake. The David Cronenberg, because the David Cronenberg, he went sicker and sicker, and then when the fly dies, it's like, oh, okay, the fly's dead, and then Gina Davis kind of goes off, and then traumatized. Where
he gets stuck in the spider web.
But the fly, the original, when you see help me, and he's there, and they take a great big rock and they smash him. I think that's more of an effective ending than what we got.
I thought it was a spider web.
A spider web, but he's a fly. He's got the human head and the body of the fly, and they take a great big, the spider's coming to eat him. He's got him all wrapped up.
So long.
And when you think about how spiders kill their prey, they wrap them up and then they draw the blood out of them. And then, but Vincent Price takes a great big rock and then smashes them, which I don't know which is worse. But I thought that was quite an effective ending because it's one of those endings that you see that sticks with you for the rest of the
life. It does. Clearly, after all these years, I haven't seen that version in years and years. And that's the one part of the movie I totally remember, except for when he's got the head and the arm thing going on.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it does suffer from the 1960s, late 1950s, feeling about it, and because your special effects are very, very limited.
I know, but they're so much fun though. They're just fun movies. I mean, they don't really take the piss out of me when I was a kid, but now they're just fun.
That when listening to you, it makes me realize there's a flaw in the film. I mean, if he has the head of a fly. I mean, if the fly has the head of a human, why does the fly keep flying away from people every time they try to catch him? You would think they're trying to help him, but instead he keeps running away from them all the time.
Going psychotic because he's done this thing a couple times.
No, he's talking about the the head being
the fly with the human
the
head.
fly itself. The fly with the human head.
With the human head. Now, the man with the fly head, he was starting to lose his humanity.
Right.
Although, I don't know, is a fly a vicious animal, a vicious insect?
Well, to be honest, if the story lasted, okay, let's sit there and say the story takes place in 2 weeks. The fly would have been dead because a fly only has a lifespan of 24 hours, or is it 48 hours?
Something like that. A couple days at the very most.
So because they're born from a maggot, aren't they? They have a longer life as a maggot than they do as a fly. So so he would have been dead anyway before he even got caught in that fly.
Life as a maggot. Yes, and then
I hate flies. We got bad down here in Texas, so I can't stand them.
Well, I don't like big flies or what they call deer flies or horse flies. I don't like those things.
Oh, man, I run when I see those things. They put holes in your skin.
Yes, they will. They punch a hole in your skin. I mean, it doesn't feel very good.
You guys get those black flies. I don't miss that shit from New York.
Oh, yes.
Black fly season.
Little
that is
black
some of the
flies.
worst shit ever.
They'll suck your blood without you even realizing it until you start to itch. I used to go berry picking up in Maine, and I always had to deal with these deer flies. I'd wear a hat because if they land on your head and you don't know it, they'll pick you or whatever they do to you. Zap, then you know it. And I've killed them, and they have very strange markings on their wings. There's black markings on their wings, but they look like a fly, but they're not a fly. There's something else. I don't know what. But at the beach, they're even bigger than that, these things. It's like they dive bomb you, and they'll go to your ankle until you feel a pick on your ankle. You don't know what's on you. Ugh, God, thinking about it now is making me shiver.
It's not summer yet. Help me.
Now, listen, the sequel was just a remake of the first one, wasn't it? I mean, now it's
but it was in black and white. That for some reason they didn't want to spend the money on the color, which is kind of weird. So but
they did make a bigger head.
Black and white story. Yeah,
they made a bigger head for the.
Well, this is the picture that always kills me.
but what every guy knows. Nothing's better than a bigger head.
But he did the same thing. He'd say, Cecile. There was a woman's name. He'd say, Cecile, help me. Cecile. And that was, it's kind of a laughable moment when that happens.
But does he
oh, yeah, there it is right there.
Yeah.
He sounded like a munchkin. That was part of it. Cecile.
So,
are you watching
what we
it?
should...
No, I just pulled up the pictures. Help me.
She's pulling up, showing our listeners on an audio podcast.
I'm showing y'all. I know they Get off.
So, I think what we should probably do is get to the end of our House of Usher. So I think what we do is get to our final thoughts. So, Vicky, what are your final thoughts of The Fall of the House of Ushers by Edgar Allan Poe and House of Usher?
After that enthusiastic conversation and exchange, it's one of my favorite Vincent Price movies, actually. I know the book was hard, the novel, the Poe novel is hard to follow most of the time, but this does put it in a little more perspective. I don't know if it's exactly what Poe meant, but it makes everything, makes a little more sense. And as far as, all these movies were kind of cheesier back in the day, but they're so much fun to watch now, as opposed to all this. I know everybody's into special effects, but I really liked it. I like all the Vincent Price movies, though. I'm kind of biased. What about you?
Me?
Yeah.
Or Keith?
No,
Rod.
Oh, me? Okay. Well, the story has always been one of my favorite Poe stories.
Me
but
too.
I will admit that when I haven't read it for a while, I tend to remember it so well that I don't go back and read it again. It's not the kind of thing that calls to me. But the movie itself is the kind of thing that I have seen dozens of times since 1960. And it never fails to amaze me. I'm really kind of mesmerized by Vincent Price's look and his performance, and plus the very, very good direction by Roger Corman. I mean, I think that was the first movie where they talked about him moving down hallways. Have you ever heard that, Keith, where that was a specialty of Corman's, to show people walking down a long hallway? And there's a scene in there where Philip is running after Madeleine, and she's taking all these back stairs to go up to where Roderick is, and there's blood all over the steps. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
he sees
He's
blood
following
droplets
where
on his
she could have gone.
Well, wasn't that coming out of her hands from clawing at stuff?
Yeah, because she had supposedly dug her. I assume that in the course of digging herself out of this, she lost her sanity.
In her fingernails.
And knew that he had done this, and that's why she suddenly appeared in his room. I don't know how she got in there.
Secret passage. Secret passage.
Secret passage.
And remember, because he kept going out of a secret passage and finding out another secret passage, and then he opened up into another secret passage room and things like that.
I see. She knew how to do it then. Yeah, I really enjoy that movie, and I'm sure I'll see it again.
Yeah.
Right.
Perfect woman. She knew her way around the house.
Oh, shut up.
Me personally,
trouble.
that was a joke to our listeners out there. So if you're a feminist, send all your hate mail to vicky.ray@llpodcast.com.
I will gladly forward it on.
But for me personally, I The Fall of the House of Ushers as a story and as a reading experience wasn't my favorite as a reading experience. But saying that, I love the themes. I love the very differences way that you can interpret the story itself by Poe. I also like the way that I do have difficulty with first-person narratives. It's not one of my favorite ways of reading a story. I always prefer third-person narratives. So, but saying this, because I do think that when you have an unlikely and untrustworthy narrator, it's very, very open to interpretation. And so I quite like, once I read it for a second story and the second time and started thinking about it, it presented itself with a lot of different symbolisms and different ways that I looked at it. And I quite like that. Though my most joyful part of this experience was watching Fall of the House of Ushers again, because I think that the way Matheson was able to put the story forward to make it relatable, and I like for the simple fact that I think that all the character and the acting was very, very good, and I found myself very, very entranced by the film itself and by the story, and I couldn't stop watching it. I watched it on a Sunday morning, got out of bed, got my cup of tea, turned it on, go, okay, I'm going to watch this, and I didn't move for the whole 90 minutes that went, and when it was over, I felt like it was a very satisfied film for me.
It is.
So, and I had to sit there and say, I am a big Vincent Price fan, though there are some, there's some Vincent Price ones I kind of look at because Vincent Price is in it, but then there are other ones I really, really enjoy. And I say that this is one of the ones I really enjoy. As I do agree with Rod that Mask of the Red Death is probably my favorite of this cycle that we've gone through, but this follows closely behind it, So that brings us to the ending of the Literary License Podcast episode. So I just want to let people know that we are doing a competition. If you want to win a hoodie with a Literary License Podcast hoodie, we're available in any color that you wish. All you need to do is send a picture of your pet at send a picture of your pet to the following email, which is info@llpodcast.com. Every month we will pick a winner and they will win a hoodie, which is 100% cotton, fantastic colors, and there are pictures. If you're probably part of the newsletter, make sure you join up for their newsletter as well at www.llpodcast.com. Our next episode is going to be Westworld and Shawshank Redemption as we carry on with our Obsession Month. And of course, this month is my obsession, and we're dealing with people of obsession. We did obsessive love disorder last month. This is people with obsession, so the obsession doesn't deal with love. So we got Westworld with a man obsessed with killing somebody, and Shawshank Redemption of a man who's obsessed of getting out of prison no matter what. Though I do think being repeatedly raped probably does help with that obsession moving right along, but that's another story for the next podcast. You can also follow us on social media at our Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, and our Instagram account. And remember, you can always find us on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Podbean, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Cashbox Radio, and TuneIn Radio. And of course, if you have an Alexa, just go hello Alexa, play the Literary License Podcast, and it will play our podcast for you. So I'd like to say goodnight. So remember, before we say goodnight, to make sure that you send us copies of your pets so you too can win a fantastic hoodie with other prizes coming up later in the year. And remember to send those pictures to info@llpodcast.com, and you can make your pet a star. So it's good night for myself. Good night, Vicky.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Rod.
Good night or good day.
And we'll see you next week with Westworld and Shawshank Redemption.
Ooh.
Yeah.
This has been a literally licensed podcast production. Good night.